Hi everybody, Ahmad Sadi from Land Trust Title, Central Florida. Let's talk title. Today I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what a closing means when we look at the FARBAR as-is contract. It's important to note this because as a listing agent, you want to prepare your seller for certain contingencies that might happen because of how a transaction closes or when a transaction closes. Under the new updated FARBAR contract, the contract tells us that a closing happens when the closing agent has received all of the signed documents that they need to close a transaction and when all the funds that we need to have to close a transaction are in the possession of the closing agent. So what that means is that the seller doesn't necessarily have to get the funds from closing in order for a closing to happen. All that needs to happen is that the title company, the closing agent or attorney, has all the funds sitting in the escrow account that ultimately is going to be used to disperse the transaction, and more importantly, funds that are going to ultimately go to the seller as part of their proceeds. So what does that mean? That means that as a listing agent, you want to prepare your seller and explain to them that if a closing happens and we are at the end of a business day, in particular if we're on a Friday, the closing happens at 4:45 or 5 o'clock and the funds are in with the closing agent and all of the documents needed to close the transaction are with the closing agent, we're closed at that point. As long as, if we're dealing with the lender, as long as the lender's given us authorization to fund, or if it's a cash deal and the funds are in the escrow account of the closing agent, we're closed. So that means that the buyer has the authority now to take possession of the property, even if the seller hasn't actually received their funds. So that means that even if the funds don't hit the seller's account until the following business day, which would be a Monday or Tuesday if it's a long weekend, the closing has still happened. So we've dealt with this in the past a lot where the seller refuses to hand over keys because they don't have funds in their account. That's not when a closing is taking place. As long as the funds and the documents are with the closing agent, closing has happened regardless of when the seller gets those funds into their account. So just want to be aware of that when you're talking to your sellers and prepare them in case we're dealing with a late Friday closing so that they're aware of that and they're not upset because the funds haven't hit their account before buyer's taken possession. So keep that in mind. See you guys next time.